And the third thing, and this I think goes even not just with finance organizations, right? I think this goes broadly, right? One of the third steps is, in terms of being a great collaborator, is communication, right? Like this to me, and I was out at the World Finance. Shout out to the World Finance Forum out in Fort Lauderdale that I was at, and I talked about one of the great superpowers that fresh CFOs of the future have, and part of that collaboration, man, is really having authentic, honest, and vulnerable conversations, right? Like when you're willing to say, and I think one of the best ways to come across as a great collaborator, I always use a phrase where it's like, hey, like I'm struggling. Can you help me understand how this element of your business or how this element of the process or why help me understand why you're driving this strategy and tactic, right? That phrase in terms of a communication and when you're collaborating with somebody, that comes from a place of like, hey, like I'm really like I'm struggling. I'm raising my hand and saying I'm needing help. Can you help me understand that? Right? Like that's a great way of being a great collaborator is that phrase right there. Is like how, hey, help me understand this, or like I'm struggling to see this bigger picture, or I'm not really following what you're saying. Can you explain it to me a little bit better, right? I think too many times in finance, right? And I've been in this role. I've been there. So, I think it's I've been at places where it's just like I'd rather just say like I'm not gonna sit there and just nod my head and be like, yep, uh-huh, and I'm completely lost. Like I've done that before. And then you find up in a meeting, he was like, oh no, I was talking with Chris and he was nodding his head and he was saying like, he knew what I was talking about and he knew this. And I was like, yeah, right. It's better to be authentic and say, you know what? Hey, chief technology officer, I see that you're really talking technical. Can you help me better understand how this relates to this element of this technology, or how our infrastructure mapping and system mapping helps us give it a better representation of software that we need? Like, can you help me connect those dots? Right, coming from that place when you're collaborating with somebody deneutralizes like the conflict that you want to have, right? And to me it's like naturally coming in and just saying like, hey, like I don't understand it, I want to learn more about it. You're the expert at it, just the same way the business comes to us with finance stuff, right? Like they come to us and like, hey, I see like our bookings or our net dollar retention rate, can you help me understand how we look at that, how we calculate that, and how that relates to our business, right? And that communication aspect is so vital in being a great collaborator, right? Like getting outside the finance organization and being able to communicate. And I think another tip for people is not just being able to communicate in the lens perspective that you come from, but trying to communicate to understand somebody else's perspective, right? Like go to the sales partner, go to marketing, go to operations, go to HR, go to legal, go to customer support, go to client success, go to systems architect, go to solution consultants, right? Like one of the biggest things I take away from my career is like really helping me in terms of building a lot of connections across a lot of different functional elements with our clients and even outside with partners as well too, is I went in there and I just was like, "Hey man, like tell me, okay, you're a system solutions consultant. I'm curious, man. Tell me about some of the challenge that you face, right? Tell me about like what keeps you up, what gives you concern about the direction we may be going from a go-to-market perspective, or like what kind of clients would love to work with, right? Like a lot of that collaboration that you can have when you come from that place of just being like, "Hey, I'm naturally want to know more." Curiosity, I think is the way to say it, right? When you're coming from that place of being communicative to the point of understanding and you truly want to understand like a perspective or a viewpoint or a strategy or a tactic that may be outside of your functional element, which is finance, that automatically makes you like that's coming from a place of like, "Hey, I'm like, I don't know the answer to this, and I feel like you're the expert, so I wanna learn from you." That is completely a great step in being a collaborator, right? That is like one of like to me, that is a superpower amongst the 4 superpowers that I was talking about over at the World Finance Forum in Fort Lauderdale. That is a superpower. Communication, being open to it, coming from a place to understanding, and trying to understand authentically someone else's viewpoint. Like, get in their thought process, get in their mind, get into how they're thinking, get into how that thought process or what they're talking about makes them feel. Like, how does that, how, what's their reaction when you talk about, sales are behind 33%? How does that salesperson feel? Like, what is their natural stance? Like, I think so much of the value that the CFO brings to the future for finance teams and for being a great collaborator is our ability to take like an empathetic view to people and also be great communicators.